Is this thing on? Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is HeroQuest. And today I wanted to call attention to a product and its use with HeroQuest. A product that you've probably seen many times in many different forms, maybe even without realizing it, at a variety of different stores. I'm talking about a game that contains with it many little wooden blocks of uniform size and shape. The default game rules are simple. You simply take these blocks, you layer them in rows of 3, you create stacks of them until you have exhausted your supply, and then you and another player or players will take turns removing blocks from the resultant tower and placing them on the layer above until somebody has caused this tower to fall. You might know this game as JENGA, and I would agree that's the household name for it. But because game rules cannot be copyrighted, we have seen it in a variety of forms at a variety of price points. I present to you Tower Tumble, also known as Tumbling Tower, also known as Falling Tower, Falling Wood Game, Tower Game. Now, I have 2 versions of this game specifically. I believe JENGA is around the $11 mark at my local Walmart, but I picked up many different boxes of this game at my Dollar Tree, and I probably ended up with way more wooden pieces than I'm actually going to use. We don't say those words here, though. In our hobby rooms, there's no such thing as, whoops, I got too much. No. We want to tell ourselves we'll use it all one day. Now, these blocks were $1.25 for a full tower's worth. $1.25 USD, and you probably have a store in your country, if you're outside of the US, that has an equivalent game at an equivalent price. Just go look. Tower Tumble here I found at Five Below, so this was the $5 USD version, but it's very important to note that the difference in price does denote a difference in size, and maybe not quality. They seem to be the exact same wood, sanded down, the exact same method. They've got the exact same grain on the sides. Everything about these 2 pieces of wood is just about the same. Look, they're cut from the same clothy tree, but the size difference is something that cannot be argued. Here is our $1.25. Here is our $5. Now, the price here doesn't matter. What matters here is that these are both going to be used for different use cases. What that is exactly, I don't know. But I have seen videos on YouTube, some of which I may try to emulate or bring my own style to, in which you are able to make furniture with these blocks just by drawing on them. That's right. You can replace HeroQuest furniture or supply your own by using JENGA blocks. And you can do so without even cutting into them. You can simply draw out what you want to see on the block. Now, there are some things that we have to do before we can just go drawing on the block. It depends on the medium that we want to use. It depends on what we want to achieve. But generally, you want to probably prime your block if you're going to be using any sort of paint. Otherwise, the paint will spread throughout the grain, just as it did here on my homemade outdoor path tile. Now, this looks, frankly, abhorrent. It looks absolutely terrible. But I kept it because I wanted to show you what you probably shouldn't do. But you can tell where I painted in the green first that the black that I put on afterwards was much, much less prone to spread and bleed out as it was in the places where I just put the black by itself. The green's doing the same thing, but it's kind of being covered up by the border of black that I put on this particular wood. And I didn't prime this. I just decided to go ahead and paint it right out of the box to see what would happen. I knew kind of what would happen, but you know. So I know someone will ask at some point, if you're new to the channel, this is a sort of recreation of the HeroQuest map. This mat here in the background, I use it in almost all of my videos because it covers my table nicely. It is a beautiful dungeon mat. That's the name of the product from Ian Schofield, and you can get these in PDF form on drivethrurpg.com. This one was printed through Inked Gaming, but you can choose a printer that is closer to you. It was also kindly provided by Ian, for which I will never not be grateful. Back to the video, it's important to showcase the board because we're going to be looking at the size differences and the comparisons and the presence of these blocks on the HeroQuest boards. And you know that the board here is a 1-inch standard. So if we place these blocks on the tiles, we see that they actually fit perfectly within the tile itself. We have a way to create entire paths right on the HeroQuest board. And we can take these and paint them into furniture or other things with which the heroes can interact. Not bad at all for $5. But if you have the choice, or if you have an extra $5, I would pick up this version of Tower Tumble. Not every place is going to have this, but Five Below has it as of the time of recording this video. This is made by Games Hub and is available at the same $5 USD price. And as you can see, a lot of the blocks included are colored. They're already covered in color. They're also exceedingly difficult to get out of the box. Okay, so you do get a portion of these that are unpainted if you're a wood purist, but if you know that you're going to be having a lot of paint on these things and you would like for them to be pre-primed for your convenience, this is going to work out perfectly for you. You'll save some money and you'll have everything you need. Hey, don't eat the silica gel. It tastes terrible. So we'll be testing out the blocks on the contemporary and classic HeroQuest boards because they don't really follow an exact 1 inch. The classic board is kind of 15/16 of an inch, and the new board is like 1 inch and a 32nd, which you may not think is a big deal, and it's still going to work perfectly for the purposes of what I'm going to do with these. But it does create some tile drift over time if you're using different products and you're trying to line them up with big parts of the board. So just something to keep in mind. Here we have 3-dimensional stairs. The only bad part is they're going to take up 3 by 3 on your board if you're using the new tiles. New blocks, I mean. We can create the same set of stairs on our 1-inch grid by using 3 of the small block tower tiles, and this only takes up 2 by 2. So you kind of see where I'm going with this. The small tiles, there we go again, small blocks and large blocks are actually very conveniently going to take up a 2 by 2 space and a 3 by 3 space. So I'm already pretty convinced if you want to add these wooden elements to your HeroQuest game, then getting one of each of these sizes would probably be a really good idea. And you already know HeroQuest furniture has a tendency of being smaller than the actual amount and size of tile in which it is placed, but it still encroaches upon those tiles. So for whatever intents and purposes, it is considered to be on those tiles. So your table, for example, could just be this size, and you could go ahead and use 4 tiles, 4 blocks to represent your 3-dimensional table in the room. You could start to get a little crafty, get a little committed, and put some wood glue in between the blocks to make a sort of picnic table. You could also put the legs on either side like this to create your table. It does seem to be a little bit taller at that point, but you know what? It doesn't look bad. It doesn't look bad. You could even put the benches off to the side. There now. Doesn't that look nice? I think that looks nice. We got to clean up some of this mess. We've got to open up the official HeroQuest board. Mistakes have been made. To the power of video editing, you'll never know how stressful that was. All right, so this is the HeroQuest board. Same concept. Our blocks actually take up almost exactly the 1 by 3 inch space provided by the tiles, and you could build just about whatever your heart desires using these blocks in this space. If you'd like to go a little more traditional, you can stand the blocks up like so. After creating an image on them that would give the feel of a bookshelf or a cabinet, thus providing you with extra cabinetry. We'll go ahead and use some orange blocks with a splash of color. And we haven't drawn on these yet. And we're going to be doing some drawing to sort of give you an example of how this takes different media. I did draw on this one. It's a really crappy weapons rack. I just took a pencil and started sketching the weapons rack. I did the top and the side, and we can just put that there, and hey, it's a weapons rack. Then I did my best, and I drew a torture rack top view on these 2 blocks, 1 half of the image on each block. I kept them kind of pressed together while I sketched out roughly a torture table, and that can go here, and that can be pretty much a replacement torture table. Not that you'd want to replace yours exactly, but I mean, you have an additional one here. They're not going to look good next to the 3D or the classic cardboard and plastic furniture. They're going to look very distinctly different. You could definitely use all of your blocks and make all of the furniture in your dungeon and replace your furniture like that. That way all of the visual elements look congruent with one another. But I do think that there are some exceptions to this. Anything that would be made of wood in real life, you may be able to paint these to look like the appropriate scale of wood that they would be on the HeroQuest board. And yeah, once again, if we take our 3 blocks and we stack up to make stairs, you can see that this fits perfectly on the contemporary Avalon Hill board. It just takes up a 2x2 tile space. That is exactly what the stairway tile takes up. So we have our own 3-dimensional stairs made of wood. And you can definitely save this configuration by just applying wood glue to them. You can paint this down. You can make these into cobblestone stairs. These could be really creaky stairs with lots of little knots and holes and eyes peeking out through the holes. You could paint the side here to be completely black. Maybe have like a zombie hand coming out of the darkness. What's that? I heard you say you want to get a little adventurous. You want to see what you can do with these things. I hear you. I'll tell you what you can do with these things. I just made an absolutely terrifying, deadly room using a handful of these blocks and having stairs that go up 4 steps instead of 3. Your hero can climb these steps 1 space at a time if you prefer, and then roll die to see if they're going to make it to the next post, balancing carefully after jumping from post to post, not falling to the bottomless depths below. If they make it to the other side, well, this trap room has been completed. I'm just gonna walk around it. But enough of that. Now, just to be completely clear and transparent on the colors of the blocks that come with the colored version of the Tumble Tower game at 5 Below, we have all of these. We've got this nice sort of periwinkle, this very soft orange, a yellow, a muted green, a muted cornflower blue, and then the regular pine block. And I told you we'd be testing different mediums on them, and I wasn't kidding. Let's take a look at the alcohol marker on the wooden block. Alcohol dries quite a bit lighter. Alcohol markers dry quite a bit lighter than what they look like they're going to, so several layers may be a good idea. And it will be evident after coloring what has more layers on it. Be careful. The sides of the blocks are always sanded down smooth, but the edges might be a little grainy or rough. You can still feel some roughness because that's where the grain ends. Okay, so they take alcohol markers pretty well, and they do kind of seem to bleed just a bit on the grainy parts, so that's something to keep in mind. Not so much on the sides. As expected, the colored blocks do not allow any sort of bleeding because they are already pre-painted and you're basically just coloring on the paint itself. Now, that does mean that the colors aren't going to take quite as easily. You will have to do multiple layers for this as well. This is with an alcohol marker. There's the heat kicking on. There's the video noise I've been craving in my life. Let's try some of these other ones. This is an acrylic paint marker that I also got at 5 Below. Not for this purpose, but we're going to try it out. And just like with my flat piece of wood example, if you're coloring with the grain, it's not so evident, but as soon as you go against the grain, you can see that it tends to bleed into the grain for these unpainted wood pieces, as you'd expect. For the already painted wood pieces, there is no such bleeding whatsoever, and the acrylic paint actually goes on beautifully. I love paint markers. I just love paint markers. Okay, so that's still got to dry, and it's still going to dry slightly lighter, but for the most part, the black takes so well on these colored blocks. Okay, I've got some dual tip oil markers here. I started to shake those. They don't have balls in them. I don't have to shake them. I got a blue and a black, and I just wanted to show off the color transformation whenever you apply these. Now, if you're coloring the whole block, you've got nothing to worry about as far as bleeding and stuff goes. All of that's going to work in your favor. The direction of your lines, though, might be a bit evident, or else the grain of the wood will show through like it is in this case. So you can see I started covering it linearly, and then I did circles, but You can still see the lines of the wood here. This is great though, because this is just going to represent a little pool of water right here in the middle of the dungeon. It may be three-dimensional now, but that's because I'm going to paint the sides gray, and then we will have some sort of ceremonial tub or perhaps trough made of stone and filled to the brim with water. And you don't have to color straight to the borders like I did. You could actually do gray around the sides and then black on the center. Let us switch to the black oil marker and go around the edges just to give it a little bit more closure. And use the brush tip. The brush tip worked so much better. And see, we've already put a layer of the blue, so the black's not going to be doing hardly any bleeding now. And just keep in mind, I am a novice painter. I've got no skill, no riz, no cap, whatever the hero kids are saying these days. So I don't know how I'm going to recontextualize this piece. I just know that I really like how it looks with the color applied to it, so that's great. And using an oil tip marker versus the acrylic on the bottom, I think the acrylic took a lot better on this yellow piece. And then coloring in black on the side of my blue block here, that's going to look about the same. The coverage is going to be about the same. It's a lot easier to paint in a lot of coverage using one of these brush tips on these oil-based markers, though, than it is to use the acrylic marker. Okay, and we want to see what the blue looks like now. And this is blue. It's a very dark blue. It's the same blue that I just covered this block in. So it does take on a bit of a green character, as you might expect, since we're coloring over the top of yellow. And that's something to take into account as well, that the color of the block is going to influence the final color after you're done painting over. Now I could just continue going on with layers of blue, but this is such a dark blue that it might look way darker than intended. And there is blue coverage style on the side of my blue block versus my pine block. It's a much more vibrant effect. We don't get the same kind of lines in the wood. We still have the wood grain that we can detect through the paint, but the sweeping lines of the wood don't show up because of the thick coat of paint from the factory. Alright, so we've done all of this coloring. We've had a couple of examples with the new board. Let's open up the classic board. I'm dropping blocks left and right here, y'all. That's not a good time. Not a good time in the Ash studio. I'm going to be cleaning up blocks for a while. We have here one of my original 1990 US boards. The size difference is markedly distinct. You can still put the full 1 inch by 3 inch tiles directly on this board. They'll encroach into the spaces outside of them. This might be desirable depending on what it is you'd like to illustrate. I do want to say that the feel of the old board makes it really feel like, to me, like the wood is going to fit a lot better with this era of board. It will feel more compatible than it will on the new board, despite the size difference. But that is something that's kind of neither here nor there. You get to decide how you're using things and what you're doing with stuff and how it feels, because your feelings could be different than mine. All right, so again, with the staircase example, using these small blocks from Dollar Tree, this did take up a 2x2 space on the new board. On the classic board, it encroaches slightly all around by about a 32nd of an inch on all sides. It's not a big deal. Just, you know, if things start to get crowded because you've got Chaos Warriors and Famir and heroes with their arms way out in dominant T-poses trying to assert themselves in Zargon's dungeon, those pesky heroes, they're really going to pay for that. Then you might have some crowding going on. But if you really like the look of this, then I highly encourage you to paint you some stairs. I found myself wishing that these smaller blocks had come pre-painted. If you just want to put one on the board, then it'll take up a 1x2 space. It'll very slightly encroach out into the vertical oriented tiles, but it will leave room on the sides actually, so you won't have much of a problem there. Okay, and for the table example again, this actually works almost perfectly. Table with 2 benches for booth seating in a room. There aren't a lot of rooms on the board that you can pull this off in. The center room is pretty much the only one, unless you want to remove one of those benches and just have the table up next to a wall if you're going to do it this way. Otherwise, I'd lose the other bench, and then you can place this table wherever you'd like, just like the classic table. It can, if you want, only take up a 2x2 amount of spaces, or it can take up 2x3 like the classic table does. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and color these in the same way that I've seen done in some YouTube videos. And this is the simplest thing you can do with these, short of just putting the block straight on the board and calling it good. So you have a color in the side to kind of denote an empty space, but we're going to leave the corners alone as best as we can. And we're just going to repeat this process for the ends as well as the other side. And then you can kind of see it in your mind's eye. These look like posts that are separate from one another. And with all 4 of our table legs complete, you could call that good. That's actually a serviceable table already done. You can go ahead and draw whatever decoration you'd like on top. The actual table or bench seating itself is done. The visual implication is all there. Be careful, because what happened with this is the black started to leak up the sides. So that's no good. But it does kind of give it a, oh, this table's kind of broken. It's been gnawed into by perhaps some Skaven. In the video that I saw, you put a block on top of this, and that actually completely fixes that problem. Oh, my audio is so much better now. Thank you, heater, for kicking off now. That's what it gets for being cold. That's what I get for being cold. And there we go. That table might look a lot better even. And something fun you could do is, if the table is going to really be this high off the ground, there could be some monsters hiding underneath the table. So this might work really well with something like the Axion Quest events deck for furniture, something like that. The larger blocks are going to take up just too much room. If you're not bothered by the fact that they're going to push out into the tiles around them, then it's fine. You could otherwise use these as sort of blockades, barricades, walls, and enforce that the tiles that they touch cannot be walked onto. You can place them right in the middle, and this way we've got a whole 2x4 or 8 block total section that the heroes cannot trespass upon. They have to go around it. You could go ahead and do this for something like a room where you might have to enter in through this point and leave through this point. Now the heroes have all this winding passage they have to traverse. And it's no problem if you wanted to take these and build them up to kind of give the impression that the heroes can't see over the top of them. That's probably what I would do, although I probably wouldn't stack them like this. This is some crazy color combination, Playmobil looking stuff going on here. I would probably do my best to illustrate what it is that these are representing. But don't worry about working too hard to illustrate anything at all. These blocks are so numerous that you can go ahead and buy yourself a ton of the packs like I did. I think I bought 2 or 3 only from Dollar Tree to fill up this tub, which I also got from Dollar Tree, and it filled it to the brim. And now I have all these pieces of wood to experiment on and draw on and make stuff with. And don't forget, Dollar Tree has a lot of other wood products as well. This video is not sponsored by Dollar Tree. It is sponsored by viewers like you, who are kind viewers of the channel, who enable me to get ads and be monetized and help earn a little bit of money for my hobby that I love, which is to make videos about games and crafting stuff for those games. We have these blocks that you can use for a variety of purposes. I've got my paint tray handy nearby, so I'm going to grab one of these. I painted it to look like a crate. You could have crates in your HeroQuest game. I've done a bit about pushing these crates along the tiles, which is not really how it would work in real life, but in the video game almost sense of tiles and being restricted to grid movement, you could push these along the tiles in order to block monsters. Different kinds of wood can have different qualities when painted, but almost everything you get is going to be this pine, unless you're working with something like balsa. This lovely pine takes paint just fine, in my opinion, but it can bleed. So just make sure you know what it is you're doing. If you're painting something in its entirety, like these barrels that I got from Hobby Lobby, then you're going to do just fine giving it a coat of something and then painting in the details. The details will not bleed because the paint underneath provides a barrier. And at some point, since I have them on camera, we'll go ahead and take these lovely beveled cubes that I got from Bead Park. I ordered a whole bunch. I got like 300 out of that package. Link not below. I don't have the link anymore, but go to Bead Park and look for 14mm beveled cubes, no hole, and you'll find these lovely things. And I'm going to make my own custom HeroQuest dice, some sort of version of the German kind, as they are so lovingly known. I've made a complete mess and I need to start cleaning up now. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that I've inspired you to do something or that you've learned something. And don't worry about these. These are totally not going to be made into giant HeroQuest dice that get rolled onto the board by Zargon himself. And if they hit any of the heroes, they lose immediately 7 BP. And I will see you in the next episode. Until then, have a great rest of your day and bye for now.